Diana Ross has lived a life of triumph and controversy. But one truth she carried for more than 5 decades has only now begun to surface. Her bond with Michael Jackson was unlike anything else in the world of music. An attachment so deep that even his closest friends rarely understood it. He once described her as mother, sister, and something far more complicated. A connection that haunted them both. Today at 81, her words have finally opened a door into that hidden history. The first encounter. The story began in 1969 when the Jackson 5 arrived at Motown, a label already rich with stars. Michael Joseph Jackson was just 11 years old, a child with a voice so powerful that Motown's Berry Gordy believed he was the next James Brown, and Sammy Davis Jr. rolled into one. To give the group a glamorous introduction, Motown arranged for Diana Ross, already the queen of the label, to present the Jackson 5 as if she had discovered them herself. It was a publicity stunt, but for Michael, it felt like fate. He admired Diana from the moment they met, and over time that admiration grew into something more profound. For nearly a year, Michael lived in Diana's home in Los Angeles. He called her Mama, teased his sisters by saying they would only be pretty if they looked like her, and confessed to friends that she was both a guide and a dream. Katherine Jackson, his mother, would later write in her memoir that her son often referred to Diana as if she were his second mother. Yet even then, the affection had shades of something unusual, something that didn't fit neatly into family roles. In 1971, Diana's television special introduced Michael to a national audience. Not just as part of the Jackson 5, but as a boy who could shine on his own. She gently coached him, teaching him how to move with confidence, how to control his nerves, and how to meet the camera with a smile. That special wasn't only a performance. It was a passing of the torch, an older star teaching a younger one how to survive in a business that devoured innocence. For Michael, Diana's belief in him was a lifeline. He would later summarize his feelings with one unforgettable line. She's mother, sister, and lover all combined in one. It was a statement no one quite knew how to process, but it revealed the peculiar depth of his attachment. The Wiz and the Silent Bond. By the late 1970s, Michael Jackson was no longer just the child star of the Jackson 5. He was 19 years old, caught between boyhood and manhood, trying to figure out who he was outside of Motown's control. In 1977, he took on his first major film role in The Wiz, a modern adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, featuring an all-black cast. Diana Ross, already an international icon, was cast as Dorothy, while Michael stepped into the role of the Scarecrow. For Michael, the greatest gift of the project wasn't the film itself, but the chance to spend day after day in Diana's presence. The movie was filmed in New York, far away from the protective eyes of Berry Gordy and Michael's family. Here, for the first time, he and Diana lived within the same rhythm of work, rehearsals, and late-night conversations. Crew members noticed how close they became, whispering about nights when Diana stayed at Michael's rented apartment until morning. No one ever confirmed what truly happened, and neither Diana nor Michael ever offered an explanation. But for those who saw it, the intimacy was undeniable. Diana herself once joked with friends on set, saying, "One thing's for sure, Michael isn't gay." The Wiz was a commercial failure, dismissed by critics as overblown. Yet for Michael, the experience was transformative. He wasn't interested in the box office numbers. What mattered to him was the time he had carved out with Diana, private moments that the public would never know. In her company, he could be vulnerable without judgment. She listened when he spoke about his insecurities, reassured him when his voice wavered, and gave him the rare gift of acceptance. 2 songs from the film, Ease On Down the Road and Brand New Day, captured more than a storyline. Watching Michael and Diana sing together, there was a harmony that felt personal, almost too intimate for the screen. They weren't just acting, they were looking at each other as if sharing a secret. For Michael, this bond was not romantic in the traditional sense, but it was more powerful than friendship. It was something he carried in silence, something that gave him serenity amid the chaos of fame. By 1979, Michael was already preparing to step into a new chapter with Off the Wall. But the quiet nights during the whiz stayed with him. In a world that demanded perfection, Diana gave him permission to be imperfect, and that was enough to keep her etched into his heart forever. The early 1980s marked the beginning of Michael Jackson's transformation from teen idol to global superstar. Yet, in the middle of all the flashing lights and roaring crowds, one constant remained: Diana Ross. Their connection had grown more layered, more complex. And in 1982, Michael said something that stunned the world. During an interview with Ebony magazine, his voice trembling, but steady, he confessed, "It's Diana Ross. I love her." It wasn't wrapped in metaphors or hidden behind lyrics. Michael had spoken plainly, admitting that he dreamed of marrying her. At the time, Michael was in his early 20s. Diana in her late 30s. The 14-year age gap made their dynamic unusual, and the public struggled to take his declaration seriously. Some dismissed it as youthful infatuation, but those who knew him understood how deeply he meant it. Michael had carried this feeling since childhood, and finally saying it out loud was one of the bravest things he had ever done. The public, however, didn't know what was happening behind closed doors. By the mid-1980s, Diana had promised Michael marriage, not once, but reportedly twice. She even wore his ring in public. At the 1984 American Music Awards, she kissed him on the lips on stage and cradled his face in her hands, as if daring the world to acknowledge what they had kept private for so long. For Michael, that moment felt like vindication, proof that the woman he adored might finally be his. But the reality was far harsher. Diana Ross soon pulled away. Michael's mother, Catherine, had openly disapproved of the relationship, calling Diana too old and warning that it would damage her son's image. The press began branding Diana with cruel labels, painting her as a cradle robber. Under pressure, Diana backed out of her engagement to Michael, choosing instead to marry Norwegian businessman Ari Næss Jr. Michael was devastated. He didn't attend the wedding. Friends recalled his silence in the days that followed, how he avoided the studio, refused interviews, and admitted quietly, "I loved her and always will." His heartbreak was not the loud kind. It was quiet, gnawing, and written into the unfinished songs he left in notebooks. To the public, he remained the king of pop, untouchable and unstoppable. But to those close to him, he was a young man grieving the loss of the only woman he had ever truly loved. Dirty Diana and the Silent War. By the mid-1980s, Michael Jackson stood on top of the world. Thriller had shattered every record, and he was now the most famous entertainer alive. Yet, even at the height of his success, the wound left by Diana Ross lingered. He had watched her marry Ari Næss Jr., start a new family, and build a life that did not include him. Outwardly, he carried on with his music, but privately, he turned his heartbreak into art. In 1987, Michael recorded Dirty Diana, a song that immediately sparked speculation. To the public, he explained it was about aggressive groupies, women who pursued musicians backstage. But those who listened closely sensed something deeper. The timing was suspicious. The song was copyrighted just as Diana's marriage was becoming official. Quincy Jones, Michael's longtime producer, reportedly begged him to change the lyrics, warning that everyone would assume it was about her. Michael agreed to adjust one verse, making it sound more like a generic story. Yet, the pain in his voice told another story entirely. The lyrics were sharp, almost vengeful, describing a woman hungry for fame and attention, someone who used love as a weapon. It was a far cry from Michael's usual themes of unity and innocence. To insiders, the message was clear. This was about Diana, and she knew it. Furious, she refused to speak to him for weeks. Eventually, she softened, even turning the song into a joke in her live shows, playfully referencing it in her own performances. But the rift had been exposed. Their relationship became a strange push and pull. Michael could never let her go, but Diana seemed unwilling to fully commit to him or to release him. When he was photographed with Madonna, Diana reappeared, sitting on his lap at parties and monopolizing his attention. At award shows, she flirted with him on stage, blowing kisses and clinging to him even when he brought other women as his dates. Friends described it as a cycle. Michael trying to move forward, Diana pulling him back, not to claim him, but to ensure no one else did. The result was a silent war of affection, jealousy, and unspoken words. Michael admitted in his autobiography, Moonwalk, in 1988, "I've always loved Diana Ross, and I always will." But the truth was more complicated. She was both his greatest comfort and his deepest wound, the one person who could inspire him and destroy him all at once. The 1990s brought storms that Michael Jackson could not moonwalk away from. In 1993, the first public allegations of child molestation shook the world. 13-year-old Jordan Chandler and his father accused Michael of abuse, igniting a media frenzy unlike anything before. Police raided Neverland. Reporters stalked his every move. And television networks replayed every rumor until it seemed his career might collapse entirely. Through it all, Diana Ross remained quiet in public but steadfast in private. Friends close to Michael said she called him, visited him, and reassured him that she believed in his innocence. When his own sister LaToya made damning statements, later revealed to be coerced by her abusive husband, Diana's loyalty never wavered. She saw the boy she had once mentored, the man she believed was misunderstood, and she stood firm. By 1995, when Michael collapsed during a rehearsal and was rushed to the hospital, Diana came to his bedside. Those in the room said her presence shifted the atmosphere. Michael visibly relaxed, clinging to her hand like a lifeline. At that time, he was married to Lisa Marie Presley, but even she was asked to leave the room when Diana arrived. It was an act that revealed more than words ever could. Diana occupied a space in Michael's life that no wife, girlfriend, or friend could ever replace. The storm of accusations returned in 2003 with Living with Michael Jackson, the Martin Bashir documentary that showed him admitting he allowed children to share his bed. Soon after, new charges were filed, and in 2005, Michael stood trial in Santa Maria, California. The proceedings were grueling. Months of testimony, tabloid headlines, and a prosecution determined to end his career. Michael was eventually acquitted on all counts, but the damage to his image was lasting. Throughout these years, Diana maintained her loyalty. While many in the entertainment industry distanced themselves, fearing association with scandal, Diana never publicly turned her back. To her, Michael was still the boy she had taken under her wing in 1969, still the artist she had watched transform into the greatest performer on earth. Her defense wasn't loud or combative. It was quiet, unwavering, and rooted in decades of history. The final truth, will, legacy, and Diana's words at 81. On June 25, 2009, the news of Michael Jackson's sudden death stunned the world. Fans gathered outside hospitals, radio stations replayed his hits, and tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. But for Diana Ross, the loss was painfully personal. Just hours after his passing, she released a statement that captured her grief in simple words. "I can't stop crying. This is too sudden and shocking. My heart is hurting." She had lost not only a friend, but the boy who once looked at her as the center of his universe. Soon, another revelation deepened the meaning of their bond. Michael's 2002 will surfaced, and in it he had made a decision few expected. If his mother, Katherine Jackson, could not care for his children, the next guardian would be Diana Ross. Not his sisters, not his brothers, not even Debbie Rowe, the mother of two of his children, Diana Ross. In legal terms, it was a single clause. But in emotional terms, it was a declaration more powerful than any song lyric he had ever written. It meant that Michael trusted her more than anyone else to raise his most precious legacy. To the outside world, the choice was puzzling. Some critics pointed to Diana's past troubles, including a DUI arrest, arguing she wasn't fit for the responsibility. But to Michael, the reasoning was simple. Diana had raised 5 children of her own. She had been a guiding light in his darkest times, and she had never betrayed him. In a life where trust was scarce, she had earned his absolute confidence. Years later, when the documentary Leaving Neverland reignited the scandal surrounding Michael, Diana, then in her 70s, took to Twitter to defend him. She wrote, "This is what's on my heart this morning. I believe and trust that Michael Jackson was and is a magnificent, incredible force to me and to many others." At a time when the world was once again tearing at his legacy, she stood firm, using her own reputation to shield his. And then at 81, Diana finally broke the silence she had carried for decades. In a quiet conversation, she admitted, "Michael loved me in a way that's not easy to name." She described how from the first time he said it, he never wavered. And though she cared deeply for him, she could never mirror that intensity. Her words weren't sensational or theatrical. They were calm, almost weary, as though she was tired of holding back the truth. She admitted she had kept her distance, not because she didn't care, but because she knew his love was fragile, almost too sacred to touch. Some truths take a lifetime to surface. Diana Ross waited until 81 to finally put words to the bond she shared with Michael Jackson, a love story that was never complete, but never forgotten.